sound going here? Okay, I will ask if our board member, Colin, can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. All right, Mr. Chair, with that, we can call your meeting to order.
Good. Call to order, roll call.
Thank you. Calling to order the Redevelopment Agency Advisory Board meeting for Monday, March 3rd. It should be noted at this time, calling roll, Klein.
Here.
Robertson.
Here.
Adams.
Here.
Harris. Here. Kenny.
Here.
Oliverio. Here. Connie.
Here.
Stitzer.
Here.
Van Houten. Houghton. Houghton.
Houghton.
Yikes. Apologies.
Oh.
Houghton. Mr. Chair, you do have a quorum of the Redevelopment Agency Advisory Board.
Very good. Do we have any public comment?
At this time, I need to note a few things for the public record. This meeting is being broadcast in person at City Hall as well as available online. Members of the public may provide public comment virtually by logging into the meeting link at https://links.reno.gov/RAAB03-03-25. With that, I will turn to the audience, and I have no public comment registered at this time. We will ask any attendees who are online to please raise their hand. At this time, Mr. Chair, we do have Art Rangel has raised his hand and wishes to give public comment. I will note this is 3 minutes that we allow for this time period.
Okay, very good. Arthur, you're up to talk.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
You can, okay. I just want to commend Brian on his extensive research in looking for good redevelopment models throughout the country and in Canada, and finding the excellent model in the city of Boise Capital City Development Corporation. My only regret is that I was not able to direct Brian to some of the redevelopment agencies I worked for and consulted for, and those that I reviewed as an active member of the California Redevelopment Association. As you may probably know, Governor Jerry Brown, in his ultimate wisdom, eliminated redevelopment years ago, so blight continues unabated in California. My advice to the RAD is to closely scrutinize the forthcoming performance so that the but-for test does not result in providing more TIF than needed. Also, as you all know, the greater the Florida area ratio, the greater the tax increment generated that must be used to improve the respective project areas. And I also encourage the RAD to look for projects that will expand our employment sectors, preferably high-paying jobs that will stimulate a better economy and quality of life for all Reno citizens. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Rangel. Any other public comment?
Mr. Chair, there are no other attendees with their hand up. So with that, I would recommend that you close public comment and move to your next item.
Okay, very good. We'll close that and we'll move on to approval of agenda. Just to review the agenda, we have 3 pieces for action in our B section. Then we'll have some business items with staff. Pretty simple agenda. Is everybody good with it? Any changes, recommendations? Motion to approve agenda? On the motion. Taylor second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's move right into our council liaison report.
At this time, Mayor Sheedy is unable to join us, so we have no update from council. We can close the item.
Good. Let's go into staff liaison report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Brian McCardle, Revitalization Manager. First, let me introduce Rachel McIntyre, our activation coordinator. She wasn't in attendance last time. She was a bit busy doing the Western Lights Festival. I'll let her share how many people attended and how great of an event that was. But it was definitely one for the books if you were able to come down and attend. But Rachel, real quickly, do you want to just give us a quick update?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. Rachel McIntyre. Yeah, we were over the moon, ecstatic would be an understatement about the turnout for Western Lights, first annual event. We had just over 53,000 unique attendees that came into the festival perimeter over 3 days, which is incredible. We had another 7,000 that came back for repeat visits. So we had a total of 61,000 that came through for the Western Lights Festival. Average dwell time in downtown was over an hour and a half per attendee on average, which was remarkable. We had just over a 36% out of town visitor rate for that event. The bulk of the folks coming from Oakland, the Bay Area, and Sacramento, which is where the organization did invest quite a bit in outside targeted advertising. So it was great to see the return on investment there. And they're very excited to get planning for year 2. We've already had 2 sponsorship meetings take place for next year's event from new sponsors, including the road. So we're very excited to figure out how we can work with some of the downtown businesses in a different way next year to expand the activation and the footprint. We should have an economic impact report ready in the next week or so that we'll be able to share out this week as well.
He said, take some rest time, and she went right into planning next year.
We have 11 other activations that are coming within the downtown core this year, so.
Could you share something on that real quick as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So last year, when we looked at kind of initiatives to streamline and help us really enhance the revitalization efforts for the downtown core, we saw a need for more consistent activation and more consistent events. There are some things we can control within our downtown and some things we can't. One thing we can is the type of activity that we plan to bring more people to the downtown core. So what we did, we started a pilot program, a little seed fund, where we then worked with council and city manager's office to allocate funds specifically to events that wanted to take place within the downtown core. Those events and promoters were then allocated funding for up to 2 years for activation. We're excited that we have 11 new events. We have a couple of events that will be weekly recurring activations. We're working with the Reno Philharmonic, Cordillera Film Festival, as well as Biggest Little Tribe, Offbeat Music Festival, AHA Projects, Reno Generator, Riverwalk Districts. We have lots of partners coming in on these, which we're very excited about. But yeah, we'll have 11 new activations, some of which will be monthly and some of which will be quarterly. Western Lights was the first to kind of kick off the series. And the rest will spark back up starting in May.
Great.
Any comments? Any feedback?
Colin has one.
Oh, Colin, please.
Thank you. Congratulations, Rachel and Brian. That's tremendous and exciting to hear. I am wondering if there is a who's doing the economic impact reporting, and where did the numbers of visitors, is that like a cell phone location based data set, or how was that determined?
Yeah, so we have a software that we license here at the city called Placer AI. Placer allows us to gather a tremendous amount of data. We utilize it for events, and so we set a geofence perimeter to target specifically the festival grounds. That's how we gather the data. It does use your IP address, your home IP address, so it also allows you to track visitor rates. One of the really cool things about that data is that it does not include children. Children don't have phones, so we know how many children. There were thousands of children running around downtown this weekend or this past weekend. And so we know that number is actually significantly higher than the 61,000. It also removes downtown residents. And so we know that our residents came through in full force for this festival, and their footprints are not included. And then as far as the economic impact report, we're working with a couple different calculators on that. It takes kind of the capital that you invested into the project, your attendance, average dwell time, and a number of other factors, and then it gives you your economic impact.
That's going to be super valuable. Thank you.
We'll probably do it in some sort of nice infographic form, easily consumable. All right.
Anything else from staff?
Yeah, I just want to add, some of you may have heard, but Harris is officially out of bankruptcy. The funds were transferred. Not out of the woods yet. The cost to complete is probably going to be roughly about $200 million. Conversations are already started with potential investors, construction managers, and contractors to get that back online. I would expect to see a TIF application from them in the future, but they have a few more steps to get that going before we can have those types of discussion. They wanted to talk about that previously, but for the eligibility requirements, they can't talk to us while they're in bankruptcy. So after that's over, we're good to go. Not out of the woods yet, long way to go, but definitely a significant step forward. I'll also mention at the city council meeting last week, council gave direction to us to start the process of selling surplus properties. We've recommended that the RDA possibly purchase some of those, so that'll be a future agenda item that we'll likely bring back here. And the Lear Theater. So there is currently a bill in the legislature that will provide about $12 million to improve the Lear Theater. Rough estimates to improve the Lear Theater came at $18 to $20 million. So even if that comes through, that's a $6 to $8 million gap that will have to be discussed.
And Brian, so Nettie Oliveria, for the record, that's a matching if it's passed by the legislature.
Okay.
correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Is it a match?
It's actually Attorney Assistant City Manager for the record. Yes, the bill is being proposed by Senator Angie Taylor, and it is a proposed match. It doesn't necessarily need to come from the city of Reno. However, it would be a requirement of 1-for-1 matching funds before the dollars would be released. Likely, we would be named as the fiscal agent through that process. However, it is important to note that there is $0 dedicated in any funding source from the city of Reno to that building at current beyond the moderate term debt payments that we pay.
And if passed, it's a very tight deadline. The monies have to be expended by
27.
27. Yeah.
Brian, how many properties are we talking about?
We had 51 properties that we reviewed that are considered surplus. We received direction to sell 12 of those on the city side. And we recommended that the RDA purchase 8. And these are strategic in value. Mainly, we don't just want to sell them to anybody. We want to mainly hold them for the right development. We don't want anyone holding or speculating on these. So we'll start the process, bring that back here to have further discussions, but that was just last week. And most of these are retract properties, I'll mention that. So they currently have tenants like Martin Ironworks, RHP, things like that. Some of the tenants have expressed purchasing those back and making improvements, and so we'll start those conversations. That is my report, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Very good. Let's move into our business items. We'll start with B1, of course, and just so board member knows, as the applicant comes up and presents, feel free to ask questions. Without having to ask, raise your hand or anything, just state your name, ask your questions, but just give them some latitude to get through their presentations before you start varying the questions. But let's begin with B1.
Would you like me to preface it? Well, I'll just say that, so we've received an application, a TIF application, from the project from its Keystone MF Holdco, which is connected to, Ensemble. Is that it? Okay. For a project on the corner of 5th and Keystone, the application is primarily for a parking structure, but relative to that, it is a multifamily project of 191 units next to it, as well as a future phase 3 retail. So there's nuance to how future TIF is created with those projects and how it could support a parking structure. But right now the application is just for the parking structure. And so what we'd like to do is, if this proceeds today, is start the process of doing all the underwriting, checking all the math, and starting to look at how a TIF deal gets put together. We won't likely take these to council in the interim. We will seek recommendations from this body, go to the process, have a final sort of prepared TIF agreement, get recommendation from this body, and then take it to council. If we keep going back and forth forever, these things will take 6 to 9 months to get through. So that's just a preface, and I'll welcome the applicants up if they want to give a presentation.
Sure, I'll just tell you ahead, Brian, is that work?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. Good morning. My name is, for the record, Garrett Gordon. I'm a lawyer at Womble Bond Dickinson, formerly known as Louis Roca. You can see our old logo up there. My background is in urban planning. I have a degree in urban planning, so really fortunate to be working on redevelopment projects. Also wrote a paper in law school on TIF, interesting enough. So always had my eye on working on TIF projects. So we're calling this project the Keystone and Fifth Mixed Use Garage Project. Go ahead, next round.
Oh,
So we're actually.
I'm not sure. We'll see what happens.
It's on this screen.
It's on this screen.
It's just taking a minute.
I'm not
That wraps up my presentation.
looking for a motion, Mr. Chair.
It came up, so
It's like I can see it on one and see it on the other, and I am sharing.
Maybe unshare.
can you unshare and reshare?
Sure. Let's try again.
Public stuff for me. Yeah, Tabor, for the record, I'm just gonna disclose that, the principals in the room invest in my organization, whatever.
This is interesting.
That's it, if we're talking about just completing research.
So I can share here, but not there.
Related to this specific one?
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah, that does one thing. Now let's see if I can share it with.
Doing business.
Maybe, famous last words.
Oh, two good looking dogs.
I could
not guy. I didn't know they were here.
I could not resist putting that in. Are we okay, Ashley? We'll go back and forth.
I think we are good. We're gonna keep trying. Let's go with yes, and I will rely on audience members letting me know
Okay. Let's
we're
go.
gonna get through it.
As Brian mentioned, this project has been a joint venture between S3 Development. In the room are its two principals, Blake Smith and Blake Smith Jr. Interesting enough, S3 is for three Smiths, but the third one is not with us today. All of you certainly aware of S3 Development's history. I mean, certainly started with the master plan community, Somerset, 3,700 homes, golf course, amenities spread out over 3,000 acres. Since then, sold over, 4,000 lots, entitled thousands and thousands of lots. Certainly been a staple in this community with retail, commercial, residential, and are now working on the master plan community up in Five Ridges. Next slide. Perfect. Their partner on the Keystone project is Ensemble, a Southern California company. A few of their principals who we've been working with as a team are listed up here: Tyson Sales, Conrad Gardner, and Logan Murphy. You can see just their bios, tens of thousands of multifamily units constructed, delivered throughout the country, as well as over $1 billion of hospitality, mixed use, commercial, retail development. So I know part of the findings and analysis of, do you have a group that has experience and can move a project forward? And I would assert to you, we absolutely do with S3 and Ensemble. Next slide. So the location, many of you are certainly familiar with the West End Commons on 5th and Vine. For us who went to Reno High School, we used to go here for cue and cushion back in the day and play a little pool. That's it. And drink a Diet Coke. But yeah, you can see, if you can identify a piece of light in town, certainly kind of post heyday of cue and cushion in that shopping center, it was this site. There was the ore ditch that ran above the site. There was trees, there was homeless encampments, and that movement of that ditch to open up this development was over $2 million investment in this site to underground that ditch to move forward what we have today. And so just some context, that site sat vacant for about 15 years due to that ore ditch running through the site. Ensemble and S3 spent $2 million to develop the land, move the ditch underground, and unlock the value of the site.
As you can see on the left-hand side of the screen today, Ensemble and S3 have brought a high-quality businesses to the area and now looking to complete the vision, bringing more life to the West End Commons site and turn it into a mixed-use anchor for downtown. So phase one, you can see is completed. Many of you probably went to the Panera or the Starbucks or the In-N-Out. You can see heading eastbound the two large lots. The idea there is what I'm going to talk to you about today, developing that into 191 unit multifamily project, an additional retail pad there along the freeway, and then the parking garage that we're asking to move forward with the due diligence phase to fund that would help both the West End retail side and also the multifamily side. Next slide. So that's our request. The joint venture of Keystone MF Holdco is requesting tax increment financing to build the parking garage. So that's quote unquote our project. We would use TIF from the project, both phase one and phase two, subject to the but-for test, subject to the fiscal analysis by the third-party consultant, but would build this parking garage. As I mentioned before, the partnership is substantially completed. The first phase of the 10-acre master plan project, the West End Commons Retail Center, with both tenants and Starbucks, In-N-Out and others, now moving forward with its second phase. Here's part of the but-for test in my third bullet point, that we currently had active permits for a 300-unit project to move forward, but that was no longer financially viable due to interest rates, due to cost of labor, due to cost of materials, kind of all the economic headwinds we've all faced here in the last 12 to 18 months, if not a little longer. The project was on hold. When this opportunity from TIF came up, we took a close look at it and now think, but for the money going into the parking garage, we wouldn't have a development if we can use TIF for the parking garage. You're going to get a number of great, next slide, please, number of great components to finish out this 4-acre development. So what will you get if we're able to work with your third-party consultant to fund the garage? Well, number one, you're going to get the additional retail on the freeway, about 1.5 acres. Two, a 91-unit project to be located on the southeast corner of the site on 5th and Vine. And the project, and this is really important, that this is not just a market rate project, but there's going to be an affordability component to it. So you're going to have a mixed income project. This particular project will be designating 20% of its units, 38 units, to be affordable to residents earning 50% of the AMI, the area median income or less, subject to, of course, approval with the state bonding and financing. Three, what else are you going to get? You're going to get a 278-car parking garage. And the parking garage really plays two critical roles for Ensemble's mixed-use development. First, if you guys have been out there, it's a little tight because you got both employees parking there and guests parking there and customers parking there. So this parking garage will open up some much needed employee parking. If the employee is out from parking in that area, put them in the garage, and it not only opens up access for customers to the existing retail, but for the new pad, it will flow very, very nicely. Given the popularity of the center and its restaurants, parking can be tricky at peak times. These additional parking spaces will be helpful. So when we talk about, I know Mr. Tanya appreciates kind of the legal nexus of projects. The parking garage certainly has a great nexus to the existing retail to loosen up the parking, as well as will catalyze the development of these 191 housing units, without which they would not be built. So we're requesting today from you to push forward, to go work with a third-party consultant to do due diligence on both analyzing pulling TIF from the parking garage, property taxes, pulling TIF from the new apartments, property taxes, and then potentially, if needed, to make this financially viable, pulling some TIF from the existing West End Commons. But of course, that would be sitting down with the consultant and getting their recommendations and coming back to you for ultimate direction. Next slide. So here you can see kind of the three phases. The West End has been built. The additional retail 1.5 acres along the freeway would be constructed with this TIF request. And then the 191 unit apartment project with the garage would be constructed as well. I received a few questions of, well, is there any, is there a concern about just doing the parking garage and not doing the multifamily? No, it'd be the same phase, that the multifamily comes with the parking garage, and the parking garage, parks both the residents and the apartments, as well as the, customers and employees at the West End Commons. Next slide. Here's another kind of site plan of what we envision the 191 unit apartment project to look like, which would be there along Vine Street. And I would certainly argue that old vacant lot certainly it looks blighted, needs to get developed. You know, it's funny on the left-hand side there, you still have that Wendy's. It reminds me of maybe the Santa Fe of holding out, getting development built around it. But it's great to have the Wendy's there, and they'll certainly, I think, are going to appreciate 191 units being built right next to them. It's going to help with our business all day long. But you can see the garage there strategically positioned to not only provide the parking for the West End Commons, but also for the apartments. Next slide. Just another rendering, some first floor retail, which I know redevelopment and city council is pushing in all kind of new developments, including multifamily. So some first floor retail, potentially the apartment unit, and then the parking garage. And again, we certainly understand this is the first step in a long process. These are just renderings. Once we come back to you with the consultants, hopefully come back to you with the consultants' recommendations, and now we know how much money would be awarded and allowed, we can flesh this out a little bit more for all of you. And just a couple more slides, just some pictures of what we envision these apartments to potentially look like. Ensemble S3, long history of building some of these units, and some of these, you know, are proposals of what it may look like, but it's going to be a very nice, beautiful project that really cleans up and finishes out an already beautiful project there on 5th and Vine. Next slide, just a couple more pictures. So kind of the request today is just for the parking garage cost is $7 million. Assuming we get approval today and work diligently with your consultant, come back here and go to council. Might be an aggressive schedule, but you know, we'd love to, you know, get the shovel in the ground as early as this summer. Not only would it be for the parking garage, but for the multifamily project and the 2 retail phases. The project is anticipated to generate about $70,000 in new annual tax increment revenue, and support the city's strategic objectives for housing, economic, and infrastructure investment. So we would take that proposed property tax that would be spun off from the parking garage, sit down with the consultant and see, is that enough to meet the but-for test and the feasibility to build a $7 million project, or would we potentially need to pull some from retail phases 1 and 2? So we're prepared to hire the consultant, and we appreciate staff right there making the recommendation for advancing the TIF application to do 3 things: evaluate the financial need of the TIF, and then staff is called kind of the gap analysis, to assess the increment revenue projections and overall fiscal feasibility, and 3, negotiate the terms and conditions of a TIF participation agreement that would come back to this body. So we appreciate the opportunity to move forward today and come back to you with the actual project and documents. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and obviously Blake and Blake are in the room as well if I need to phone a friend. So thank you.
Questions? It's Michael Klein for the record. So is the parking garage a separate parcel, or is it part of the same parcel as the multifamily?
We would envision the parking garage to be, I think it's to be determined, actually. It would be a separate building permit to build the parking garage, but I don't think we've decided whether or not it would be its own separate parcel.
And one of the reasons I asked you said the project's going to generate 70,000. Is that project just the garage, or is it encompassing the multifamily?
We're calling, for purposes of TIF, the quote unquote project is the parking garage.
Okay. And your tip you're looking for would be a tax abatement?
The TIF would be a reimbursement mechanism, right? So I understand no one's asking to bond anything and get money before it's generated. We would build it. We would build it being the apartments, the parking garage, and then the retail, and then start paying our taxes. And then we'd have a reimbursement agreement that we would get refunded X amount a year for a period of time that either 1, hit the $7 million, assuming your third-party consultant agreed with that number, or 2, we just ran out of time because the RDA 2, the clock is already ticking.
Well, that's why I asked the question about the parcels being combined, because you're going to have a bigger tax payment. And maybe an ability to get an abatement more faster if that was all part of the project, just something to think about.
And we would just, like, regardless of what the parcels, like, I mean, to be transparent, like, we're gonna be, I mean, very likely asking for tips to pull off from the apartments as well, to get to that 7 million. I think it's 100% certain we need the parking garage tip, we need the apartments tip, we need the retail tip, and then maybe the existing phase 1 tip, but that's only if the third party consultant says you need that additional delta to get this thing going vertical.
Okay. For staff on to the extent they need the existing RDA 1 TIF, it'd be helpful for me on any project if they're looking to use existing TIF. So what percentage of the whole are they requesting? I mean, are they sweeping 90% of what's out there for everybody or 1%? Just so we get an idea, because council's gonna have to prioritize which projects are taken from the existing increments, so that would be helpful for me. When I had the buffer analysis would be helpful too, to see how they meet that. And that helps you need the full 7 million. Okay, that's all I have right now. Thanks.
So is the 7 million, Kurt Stitzer for the record, is the 7 million expected to cover the complete cost of the garage? Or is that just a rough budget number at this point in time of what we think makes it viable?
It was envisioned to cover the full cost of the garage. So rather than trying to say 20% of the garage and 20% of the retail and 20% of the apartments, we just thought it was cleaner to come in here with a garage that serviced all different components of the development.
And I don't know that it's necessarily applicable or necessary to make the garage construction contingent upon the apartment construction, because when you build the garage, you then end up building the apartment. Right? Correct. Right.
Remember on?
Taylor, on for the record. Quick question though. I recognize that here you're projecting where you think you'll need revenue, but I think it's important. You're not asking this board to endorse use of those revenue streams at this point. We're just completing the research to find out what gap analysis is needed to close a $7 million window. Is that right?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Appreciate it. Yeah, so say another way, our application is a complete application because it includes a pro forma, includes the pro forma without TIF, which isn't financially viable, and then with TIF. But for purposes of today, yeah, we're not getting into any numbers. Hopefully you say, we like what you're presenting. Let's kick this all to your third-party financial consultant, and then eventually come back to you with a presentation full of numbers showing how this does pencil.
Yeah, thank you. So, coming back to Mr. Connor's point, I think that's important for us to understand what we're doing here today. We're not making a recommendation to council on anything other than we need to know what this is, consistent with precedent from our last meeting. And so, and recognizing you probably get to all of those sources. I think it's important that we work through it in sequence, get the numbers, come back, make a decision. And with that, most of it.
Quick, another question unless someone else has any questions. Go ahead.
Mike Van Houten for the record. Why initially attach the tip to the parking garage and not the residential structure?
In our opinion, thank you for the question, by the way, when we sat down, it was just cleaner from a pro forma standpoint to have it just be one standalone element of the complete development. It kind of got more complicated with our pro forma, and we're also trying to make it as simple or straightforward to your third-party consultant as well. It's just the standalone parking garage, the 7 million, and then to your point, Mr. Adams, almost like a waterfall of this, the parking garage, TIF cover it. Yes. Do we need anything else? Yes. Apartments, yes. Retail, new pad, yes, and then ultimately the existing. But we'll just bring that waterfall back to you of what we'll need. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion already on the table.
I have another question.
Let's just for the formality of it, so.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Member Kennedy already seconded. So here, I just would like to jump up to Colin to see, Colin, do you have any questions or feedback?
I don't really. I think I guess I want to see what comes out of the next steps, basically, because I'd like to see and understand more about how long a time span this TIF money would be paid back, and what that all looks like. But I understand that the motion on the table at this time is to get us to the next step where we'd have more information.
Correct. Specifically to approve advancing the application to due diligence, gap analysis, and negotiation as recommended by staff. Okay, so we're in this phase. I'll still open it up for any comments or discussions before votes.
Yeah, one additional question. I assume you don't have enough acreage to surface park for the apartments.
Correct.
So I think that's important for the but-for test.
Yeah.
They have to do a garage in order to make this work.
Yeah, that's my density on the garage.
Will the
Not
garage,
feasible without the garage.
okay,
Yeah.
that's helpful for me. Will the garage, will you guys charge for parking in the garage?
We would not charge for parking for employees, but
Okay.
we would charge some nominal amount for residents.
For the fence, okay.
I think that for the record, and thank you for that, 'cause this is a question I was coming to staff. I'm assuming as part of this analysis, we'll get some guidance on what could be built on the parcel as it presently sits, which is infinitely less than 191 units, I would think. And so I'm assuming in the staff report, we'll see something like that when we're making the final decision. Were it not for this, we get, at most, you would see a fraction of that number.
Correct. Brian McCardle, for the record. So yeah, you would get like a Florida area ratio, and it would be compared to what the zoning is currently and what could be built if you go up one story, or what a smaller Florida area ratio it would be. And then just to quickly comment on the process going forward. So there has to be there's a lot that has to happen before we get a deal done. So you start getting bids, you would go out to banks, you would start getting term sheets and letters of interest, and then you start calculating loan to value, debt service coverage, all those things. And that's when the gap really starts to present itself. And so if the debt coverage ratio is super low, then it's like you need TIF. And then you start doing the calculations, and hopefully through an algorithm, the gap analysis starts to present itself. And that's what would be presented back to this is we've proven there's a gap. This is a high density, high Florida area ratio. And it would all start to come together, and the TIF funding would also trigger the construction loan, vice versa. So everything kind of comes together in concert. And lastly, we only have 10 years left in RDA2. And so that's kind of why sitting on these things, the number of years to create the increment reduces the longer we wait. So.
Mike Van Houten for the record, I was gonna say, I kind of excited about this project. I think it's the perfect spot for some dense residential. It's technically still downtown. I know that Keystone Square across from Keystone from it is having some issues. In fact, Save Mart's going to be leaving there next year. And so I think having dense residential there not could only bolster Blake's first phase of this project, but also a lot of the surrounding residential, because there's not a lot of dense residential on the edge of that part of downtown. Thank you.
Colin has the same guy.
And yeah, Nettie Oliveria for the record, $25,100 per space is really a good deal. I hope it comes in at that.
It used to be a lot less.
Yeah. Yeah, but I've seen it be a lot more, so, yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, but yeah, again, looking at multifamily, to do any multifamily of any size, obviously, there's gotta be vertical parking. And I agree totally, Mike, with you that that area is ripe for having this kind of development.
Mark, I need one more. When are you guys hoping to start?
So as soon as we can get it all done, I would say. In reality, probably late summer to early fall. Yeah, winter, it'd be the earliest, probably get into the ground, but as soon as, if these components all come together, and if this is a positive motion, then we'll really start to spend the money to get it going forward at this point.
And it's subject to this process. Do you have financing in place, or are you kind of waiting or paralleling with this process to work?
We have lenders in place. The problem is the economics, the gap.
Okay.
And that's really, lenders are in place, architects are in place, everything's there. It's just advancing it at this point, knowing that there's a gap. And we've certainly spent the money with a positive recommendation here.
It's just, we know there's a gap in it at this point.
And since Karen Harris, for the record, really excited to see that 20% is allocated to, moderate, low income housing. I think that's a really important piece and really needed. And so kudos to you, because you didn't have to do that and include that in there. So I think that was a really positive thing for location and where it's at.
Colin?
Thank you, Colin Robertson, for the record. I wanted just to also echo what Kara mentioned a moment ago, just the importance of there being affordable units associated with the apartment building to follow. I drove the site or drove near the site yesterday, and I just wanted to, I guess, say on the record that I'd like to understand in this process better how the Vine Street side is going to function in terms of access into the parcels, because that bridge over the freeway is an important throughway from the north side to the south side. And it's elevated at a good chunk of that is elevated. So how does the Vine Street side of work, I guess, in the long frame? Because I think, there's been a lot of challenges with that overpass, I think, over the years, just with encampments underneath it. But what does the project look to do, or how is it framing its thinking about that Vine Street side?
You all analyze that this time?
I think at this point it was preliminary design, just an exit only, but we'll bring back like a formal site plan next go around if it's approved today, to answer that question. And to give you guys comfort of what you're approving.
Okay. I'll open up any testimony for or against the project or public comment online before we vote. All right. Motion on table, it's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Got it. None opposed. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yes.
Okay, thank you for coming. We'll move into B2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian McCardle for the record. Let me just preface this item. So we received essentially two applications in one packet for two different phases of the RED project. So the one where we'll be presenting first is item B2, and this is specifically a retail component associated with the RED development, mainly to build out. So in the eligibility requirements under the participation program, we have two triggers that we keep track of. If a project is essentially stalled and cannot be currently completed in the current financing environment, and if it's a minimal improvement of about $2 million, it's eligible. And so although there has been a lot of development in RED, there are some specific sections that have yet to be built out. And so they have applied specifically for a retail section, additions to, if I could summarize, like additions to the Element Hotel, and then the build out of the Outpost lot, which is its own parcel, I believe, and is undeveloped at the moment. And so the next application is specifically to build out the retail portion of the Element Hotel, as well as the empty lot right there.
And Brian, Nettie Oliveria for the record, just in disclosure, not that it's a big deal, but I am a minority owner of the property across the street.
Question. Is it? Hey, Ryan, for the record. I mean, and basically we're talking, as RED, I think is a great example of mixed use development in our community. And I know that we're likely going to see other great opportunities to provide dense, what would be mixed use, urban use in our community. Is it possible to take these together, or if we got to take, because I mean, to me, when I'm looking at when I'm thinking about a mixed use development, it's the way that it feeds off each other, off of itself, that makes it worth doing. If we need to take them separately, I'm fine with it, but it seems to me they're stronger together than they are apart.
Mr. Chair, if I can add something just from a record keeping standpoint, I would say that you can open both items together. You can hear both items together, but I would ask that you take separate motions as they are separate applications.
I'll add Brian McCarroll for the record, because this is a retail build out on a specific parcel. The next application is likely to be done over multiple phases anyway, so we're gonna be looking at those probably phase by phase by phase. And so the fact that they're independent applications at the moment, I don't think is too much of a critical factor. But you're welcome to open them up at the same time.
Yeah, just separate them. Then we can ask questions.
Kurt Stitzer for the record, as a disclosure, I am currently in contract and consulting with the ownership group on some of these build outs on a pre-construction basis. With the eventual intent that one of my organizations would be acting as a general contractor for a portion or much of what we're talking about here today. So if I need to recuse myself, I will, but I wanted to make the disclosure that I do have some direct involvement.
Legal counsel,
Ashley Attorney Assistant City Manager for the record. The answer is that the onus does fall back onto you. You have stated onto the record that you do have a potential financial opportunity associated with this. However, under 281A, you're not subject to the same ethics laws as elected members. So I would say it's up to you or your fellow board members if you wish to recuse. You also have the opportunity, you can abstain from the vote and still be present for conversation.
My apologies, one other thing, Brian McCardle for the record. B2 is the multiple phase multifamily project, not the retail one. So retail is B3, the next item. I switched those up. My apologies.
We knew where you were going.
Thanks.
Let's go, anything else before we get into questions? Okay, Colin, anything from you?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Stack up next up.
All right,
You want a presentation, Mr. Chairman?
you're on.
Do you like to add more? Please do. Yes.
I have a little presentation I can make,
Oh,
or we can
yes.
direct a discussion. It's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
Let's go through, brief presentation if it stirs up more questions.
Okay. I'll try to hustle through. I know a lot of you are busy. Okay, so again, appreciate the opportunity to be here again. For the record, Garrett Gordon, honored to not only represent the prior applicant, but this applicant as well, Lion Living. Certainly Lion Living has quite the history of development across this country. Tens of thousands of units, billions of dollars of assets, owned, managed, constructed. But I think Red and its $400 million current construction kind of speaks for itself, that it certainly has the capacity to continue to move forward. Next slide. So where are we today? So Red is fully entitled Reno Experience District, master plan mixed use development, 46 contiguous acres, currently consists of an investment of $400 million. Let me say it again, $400 million into our community of current development costs, thousands of construction jobs. I would say at this point, millions of dollars of property taxes. I would say one reason why RDA2 now, I think Brian can corroborate this, RDA2 has a bucket of money that continues to grow. It's because of this development. Currently 981 multifamily units. There is the Element Hotel, 170 key hotel that was recently opened, and then 62,000 square feet of retail. And we'll talk a little bit more about that retail in a minute. So the projects within Red, you have Emory, which is a 281 multifamily unit project. You have Base Camp, which is actually 3 buildings with a total of 340 units. You have Atwood, again, building is constructed, 359 multifamily unit ground up development, finished in 2022. You have the Element Hotel, which just was completed in 2023, 170 key hotel. You have the Outpost, which we're going to talk about a little bit in this item and the next one. And then you have the Red Park, which if any of you have attended that movie theater, probably more now than ever, because the downtown movie theater closed down. You can see the park there that has amenities, not only for the residents, but it's open to the public. So what's our ask? Next slide. What's our ask today? Again, Would appreciate the opportunity to move this forward and work with your due diligence consultant to talk about the next phase. And it would be projected to be about a $500 million future development phase with 4 additional mixed-use projects. You can see on the left-hand side there, those future phase parcels, that's what runs along Plum. And then on the south side, what's already been developed. And then, as Brian mentioned, all existing retail shell space at Red. So we have over 46,000 square feet of shell space. It has been, goes right to the but-for test. It has been tremendously difficult to pencil getting retail tenants in there. Cost of TIs, interest rates for TI loans, it's been very difficult. And I know the redevelopment agency is so pro retail of not only getting tenants in there, keeping tenants in there, but getting the public in there as well to activate this Red mixed-use multifamily. So we are asking for help today, or help with your consultant, but not only help out with that next phase, given the economics of dropping another $500 million, getting close to $1 billion, isn't as feasible as it once was. So we need some help on the first bullet point. But I want to stress, if you approve this today, I will be back as soon as possible with an agreement for the retail to make sure we have a program set up so we can get local tenants, national tenants, who knows, in there and get that space activated. So this would cover a catalyst project as a project with 50 million or more. We absolutely check that box given the numbers you're seeing on the screen. Next slide. So just kind of giving you guys a sense of what's already built. You can see here, Emory is currently built, but highlighted and left in red on that ground floor, we do have 2 tenants, Hub and Heyday Barbershop, but trying to fill those units 2, 4, 5, and the 5th floor has been tremendously difficult. So we would sit down with your third-party consultant and really see what TIF help and the amount of help and the but-for test help of how much we could allocate for TIF to each of those units in order to get the TIs that could be built out, as well as a good market rate and a fair rate for a tenant, right? You don't want a tenant to come in there, they sign a lease, they're not comfortable with it, they're out in a year. We want long-term local tenants in order to build this thing out the correct way. So that's one example of the Emory. Also, Atwood, you can see that ground floor. I mean, again, asking for help today, everyone. You can see every single one of those units are open and desperately needing some tenants to get this activated. So we're asking to activate this whole area as a catalyst project, asking for direction to the consultant to go and work with them on numbers for the retail, and then also work on the next 4 buildings in the second phase. So catalyst project, just to summarize, we're proposing a 4th phase of a mixed-use multifamily development, each with about 350 units. So we think we can get hopefully about another 1,400 new housing units in Red. The focus right now, of course, is the retail build out to try to get that 46,000 square feet of retail space in the Emory, Basecamp, Atwood apartments activated. Retail activation is critical to this project. The total estimated cost for each of the multifamily buildings is over $120 million with an increment. We think about 1.3 million with a total estimated project cost over 500 million. So kind of the request we're asking to fill that gap, to hit that delta, I think is fairly modest, but we'll talk to your consultant when you're talking about another $500 million of investment. So the project cost about 484 million for the multifamily, 18 million for the retail, which gets you to the 502 million. The tax is about 5.2 million a year annually. So our request, again, to Mr. Adams' point, like we're not getting in the weeds today. This maybe is a little bit too much weeds, but I just wanted to be transparent about the ask and where we were headed. The TIF assistance we're asking for right now, subject to go working with your consultant, would be about $18 million, which would come from each of the new buildings as well as the new retail. But I also wanted to note, so it was clear, we also plan to work with your consultant to see if to make this project viable, do we need to pull any money from the existing Red buildings? So similar to just what we did for S3 with the West Common side, pull some money. We envision another waterfall. Does the new construction allow it to pencil and meet that gap? Does the new retail construction allow it to meet that gap? If not, what should we pull from the current buildings? And what does that look like for all of you to review in the event we get there?
I have a question. For,
Yeah.
Nutty Oliveria for the record. Is the parking that comes adjacent to, like, for instance, with Emory with the Texas Rep, is the parking there only residential, or is it anticipated that retail customers would park in the parking that's part of the residence?
I think I was remiss. Robert Collard's here, just for the record, general manager of both Ranchera and Red. And we also have some folks on the call from Lion on. But let me try to answer it. My understanding is, Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, these are mixed use developments, and so certainly tenants park there as well as retail customers.
Yes, there's 2 parking spaces in Robert for the record. So the internal for Emory, there's internal parking.
Right.
That's for residents only.
Okay.
And then there's a parking garage next to it that
Yeah,
is
the
available for,
3-story.
exactly.
Mhm.
That is available for all of the retail as well as the tenants.
Is there a plan at this point to add the second 2 floor or the like 4th and 5th floors to that parking deck?
We certainly have we already have a permit for
Yeah,
that. We
there
have
you
not, we don't have a plan right now to do that unless, certainly with, future phases, we feel the need to actually expand that parking.
And so that parking, continuing Nutty Oliveria, that parking in the parking deck would then be accommodating the Element and the additional outpost retail as well.
That's correct.
And then retail on the ground floor for all of the currently existing buildings.
That's correct. Yes.
Mike Van Houten for the record. And this is just a question of, because I don't know a whole lot about commercial real estate. What has made leasing the spaces at Red so difficult compared to like across the street at Reno Public Market, where almost all of the exterior spaces were also leased and basically were just shells for those tenants to improve them as well?
Yeah, Robert Coolard for the record. There's a number of things, really what kind of Mr. Gordon talked about, the capital markets right now. It's very expensive to build these out. With a much different section when you look at Reno Public Market, which is an outward on the exterior. Ours, all of our retail is on the interior. And so it's all inline here, a lot more difficult. And certainly when we're talking about the exterior future phases, that face Reno Public Market, those are really the big ones that we think are going to be catalysts to get, a lot more activity going on the inside as well.
Okay. And to your point, Mike, right, this first agenda item is kind of Palace project, let us go explore. The next agenda item is for a specific tenant. So we would envision if you move the Palace project forward, as we got commitments from tenants and what that financial model looked like, we would come back to you and make sure you were comfortable with that analysis.
Okay. And on the residential side, what time period do you envision adding 1,400 additional units? Because I do get a little concerned about a regional impact of adding that many units and what that might do to a lot of the buildings that just finished construction downtown, and they're all kind of struggling in their own ways. Like, Ballpark Apartments isn't leasing really well. Oslo is not leasing really well. Mod 2 just sold and destroyed all their equity with the sale that they just did just to get out of that apartment complex. And even you said the 245 North Arlington, he's taking like a $7 million loss on building it. So do you think, yeah, Jacob, so you think that the market can handle that many, and does that put other developers at a competitive disadvantage in RDA 1, since they can't really use that tool yet for probably another year, right?
At least.
At least.
Yeah, Ashley Turney, Assistant City Manager for the record. While I can't speak to the competitive disadvantage to other developers, the question regarding RDA 1, I can respond to, and Brian has more details. RDA 1 has been in a tremendous amount of debt. We are now, for the first time, seeing that we are about out of debt. The increment that RDA one is gonna throw off next year is just a few $100,000. So any tip deals that would come in would take a while to actualize in that area. We're anticipating about $350,000 to be thrown off in next FY. So it will take a bit for RDA one to compound at that same level that RDA two is.
And if I may, so first of all, why RDA two finally has some money in it certainly helps with the 400 million they, invested. But it's a great question because one, if we get to go to the financial consultant today, part of that is a market study. And so we will look at, are we saturating the market with these units or not? Today, you're not approving 1,400 units. We have two buckets, right? We get the retail, which will be back as soon as possible, but that's our second bucket of we think that's the development. But let's say we do the market analysis and a class A office building is what the market needs. That's why this is a catalyst project. You're kind of saying today, yeah, we're allowing this to be a catalyst project, bring back to us projects that pencil and that meet the market analysis and work for Reno. So let's say we bring back an office building, we have to show you the but-for test and all the findings. And maybe that's the right development. We think it's multifamily, but we may be back to you later this year with something different. Okay. Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
Might add real quick, Brian McCarter for the record. RDA one, I don't want to signal that RDA one doesn't have the ability to entertain TIF applications. By the time a new project came in, was built, started creating increment, RDA one would be out of debt. And so we would entertain RDA one applications at this time currently. And I forgot the second thing I was going to talk about. Oh, to that function about the type of project and risk. A lot of these projects still have to go get financing. And so if a project is too risky, it's going to be really hard for them to get financing, which creates a bigger gap, essentially. But if they can't get lending on the project because it's too risky, it kind of makes it moot to talk about, a TIF application. So different hurdles before it gets to this.
Okay. And Mike, why we like today bringing you two applications, the catalyst and then the next one, is to kind of show you how we envision the next one's going, right? The next one is a standalone TI project. We're pretty close on the numbers. We're gonna go talk to your consultant. And if it gets approved, we'd like to have a shovel in the ground, this summer, if not sooner. And then that would be the model to bring back these other pieces of a catalyst project to make sure you're comfortable.
And that independent retail is dependent on this TIF being approved, right? Like it wouldn't happen if they didn't get the TIF approval.
The next item, absolutely, but for this TIF approval, you're not gonna jump ahead, you're not gonna get electric TIF. Also, but for the go ahead today to analyze all the retail, the 60,000 plus square feet of retail, but for that green light, you're not gonna get retail anytime soon. That's right.
And Nettie Oliverio, again, this is an opportunity zone project, right? Red as a whole.
I didn't work on that, but that's my understanding, yes.
Yes, and so with this next phase, you'll continue with opportunity zone investment.
Yeah.
For that, which means then you will hold the project for 10 years.
That's correct. I know a lot about TIF, not a lot about opportunity zones, so I don't want to opine.
Yeah, just ask it.
It's pretty, nuanced, so.
Member Adams?
I'm good.
Okay, Colin, anything from you online?
Yes, thank you, Colin Robertson, for the record. I appreciate the applicant's explanation of the market analysis to come. What I'd like to see is some information about the existing unit numbers and what the occupancy is like as part of that process. I think, I'm understanding where we are in that process, but just from an occupancy standpoint, I'd be very interested to see how that looks at this time and then how that ties into the analysis.
Are you asking for residential occupancy or the retail component?
Both ends. They're to Taylor's earlier point. They're connected.
Mr. Chairman, just a comment. be happy to provide that information the next time we come back, if we're fortunate to go forward today, no problem.
Very good. Anything, is there any left in the presentation on this?
I just was ending with staff's recommending moving forward to the next steps. Appreciate the opportunity to do so and bring more of items like the next one, real projects, if it was designated as a catalyst project.
Question for staff, for our purposes, what's the difference sort of between a catalyst and a TIF application in terms of your analysis? Is it just the threshold dollars of the size of the project, or you're actually, are there different criteria they have to satisfy?
Yeah, so Brian McCarter for the record. Typically a catalyst project will be over $50 million and will be multi-phased and a little bit nuanced, like a center, some sort of entertainment function. It's a little bit harder to model those. The standard TIP application will be multifamily, where you just come in, number of units, retail. It's super easy to do the pro formas on things like that. Catalyst is for bigger, nuanced projects. This won't be that complicated because it is just 4 phases of mixed use, multifamily and retail. But it is a significant investment over multiple phases. And so it does satisfy the catalyst.
So if they come back
designation.
and what I couldn't tell is if it's like a all or nothing, they're gonna do all 4 phases plus retail or none of it. What I'm trying to get at is, do they still qualify for a catalyst if they come back with the analysis and boy, it looks like the retail works, but the rest doesn't. Now they're below the threshold. Can they still come back with a TIP application on that same piece?
I would imagine so.
And then my other comment, same as before, to the extent that they're looking to take RDA 2 funds outside of anything that they're creating, that same analysis of proportionally, what are they looking to take? I'd like proportionally Lake District as well as the RDA 2 as a whole, in terms of the percentage they would be asking for if they get to that point. And then the third thing I'd like from staff in your analysis is how does this meet the objectives of the Lake District under the plan?
So, any other, I'll open up for any testimony for the project. Councilors, online, any testimony or public comment for the project? Any against the project? Any other public comment? Okay. Any, all your questions? Answered?
Move forward.
Okay, so it's moved and approved by Member Adams, second by Member Harris.
Clarification, it's just moving forward with the due diligence.
That's correct.
Okay.
Consistent with the request, move approval of moving forward with the due diligence to come back to the board. Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes. Any abstentions? Sorry. Okay, very good. So for the record, members did serve abstain. And motion passes. Let's move into V3.
Brian McCarter for the record site, as previously mentioned, this is a standard TIP application just for the retail component connected to the Element Hotel and the retail outpost site. And you have a presentation on this as well?
I do, last one, I promise.
All right.
Thanks for your patience today.
We want popcorn.
I can't compete with all this candy up there. That's
You
impressive.
want some? We can support
Some
some.
of that in city council chamber or planning commission.
People will never, people will never leave if we do that.
12:15 AM the other night. They used some candy. Okay, Mr. Chairman, may I proceed? Please. Okay, so as I mentioned on the prior item, appreciate the support on the catalyst. Now we're talking about a project, and I would anticipate bringing back hopefully many more of these now that this is deemed a catalyst. My first slide was again the background of Lion Living. I think I made the record clear last item. Certainly capable and have the construction wherewithal to move this project forward. So again, just for the record, next slide, red, 46 acres, $400 million investment, thousands of jobs, property taxes, existing units are close to 1,000, hotel, and 62,000 square feet of retail. So this slide was also on last item, but I've now highlighted or bolded 2 items. So today on this item, we're requesting some TIF assistance, bridge the gap in order to bring in a tenant in both the Element retail area, about 6,000 square feet, as well as the outpost. as you know, the Element Hotel has been constructed. The 6,000 square feet retail area is currently vacant. The outpost is vacant, nothing's there. So if approved today, we go work with your financial consultant to go ground up with a brand new tenant at the outpost, as well as build out the retail at the Element. And it's both, next slide, please. The same tenant, it's Electric Pickle. And if any of you are familiar with it, and Mike, I did steal this from Downtown Makeover, your picture, I had to, so I want to give you credit. But I thought you did a really good job, and so, yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, if you look at kind of what Top Golf is to golf, and you have Electric Pickle to pickleball, I mean, there's courts, depending on how it's eventually designed, inside and outside, you know, restaurant, bar, food, activation, open to all ages. I mean, really an exciting, I think, tenant for downtown, downtown Reno. So the 2 bullet points there, you can see, we're requesting TIF to help out, build out the retail space. As I understand it, the Element piece would be kind of back of house over there, while the new build on the outpost would be the brand new pickle area. You can see up there the outpost. I don't have a pointer, but you can see Atwood there in orange. Yellow is outpost. So kind of in the heart of the district. So we think this is a perfect tenant in order to build this out. And then the Element Hotel is just south, and the retail is just literally right across the sidewalk. They're currently retail area. So it works great. And I can say, even though it says Electric Pickle coming soon, you know, our agreement with them is conditioned on this, but for some TIF to bridge the gap, you're not going to have pickle there. So we'd appreciate the opportunity to move this forward, to go to the consultant. Next slide. It's about an $8.5 million cost to build this out. That standalone will generate about $86,000 in new annual tax each year. We're seeking $215,000 in the gap financing. As we've talked before, that standalone area of the outpost and Element retail might not be enough to bridge that gap to the 8.5. So we'd also potentially, as Mr. Panya mentioned, look to other property taxes being generated in red to help meet that meet that gap. But we certainly know, and staff's recommending, we have to go work with your consultant to confirm the gap financing is needed, to analyze that financing, and then negotiate an agreement to bring back here for a final look. And I think if we get, hopefully, if you approve this today, we get through this process, we're gonna have a very nice kind of template of how we build out the rest of red with agreements coming back to all of you. So I'm glad and appreciate Brian kind of breaking this up, because I think it shows how we would envision moving this forward. And with that, I'm done.
Say right for the record, just to confirm though, so we're appreciate you disclosing that you're having conversation with Electric Pickle. What's important to note that if we do it, is this is for analysis. It may not, we may very well come back with something else, right? So you're not saying it will definitively be Electric Pickle. If we do this, there may very well be a different retail tenant that may need a different TIF amount or this, but what we're doing here is research to just demonstrate how TIF can help the project, right?
I'm actually saying today that our pro forma and our numbers are to build the Electric Pickle facility. If for some reason the deal fizzles for whatever reason, then I would have to come back to move a project forward. But how we got to the 8.5 million was building out Electric Pickle.
Okay.
Question, so you had in there that you're seeking 215,000, is that total or is that annual?
That's total for the gap fund.
That's the total amount, is 215, it's generating about 86.
Right.
Okay.
And that's what, again, I know it's hard to get the numbers today. That's what we think bridges the gap, but the capital markets are changing weekly.
Yeah.
And so don't be surprised if it comes back and says $1 million we need, right? Or whatever the number is, we're gonna have to, your consultant's gonna have to stamp it and say it meets the test.
Just trying to get an idea of the range. And to Taylor's question, and you probably don't know this now, but do you know whether, once you get to that point, the tenant would commit to a duration on a lease that would equal whatever it is on the return on your TIF financing? So you know the tenant's there at least long enough that you can generate the income to pay you back.
Yeah, I would envision that's part of the analysis with your consultant is to share the lease terms, the TIs, you know, the build out. Keeping in mind that RDA two has a short life, but how that all works. I would envision my next PowerPoint to you would include that information.
There's the record, question, is the negotiations with the electric people specifically contingent upon the catalyst project getting approved?
Yes, because as we envision, you had to set this as a catalyst to move forward with the retail, and now we're pulling a piece out of the catalyst and bringing you the standalone project. So yes,
So it's contingent upon those other four
it's
phases.
contingent on, sorry, to go ahead.
Yeah, it's contingent upon those other four phases moving forward.
It was contingent on, correct, the last item in this end.
Mike Van Houten for the record. When we're looking at kind of analysis, should we be concerned about like diversion factors? Because there is a pickleball place 3 miles away that just opened. And I know there was some diversion issues like with the Legends project when it opened and having retailers specifically, you know, move into that from other locations. Is there any concern about that at all?
Another good question. I think, I know at least the term, and not to go down this rabbit hole, but Mike knows it's the Starbond world, right? You mentioned Legend is displacement, right? There is a legal displacement finding for Starbond money. That there's not a legal finding for displacement for TIP. But that said, I think part of our market analysis would include, you know, competitive and saturation of the market and can two survive versus one. I would think that would be part of our market analysis.
I think it's called Third Shot, specifically an indoor pickleball.
Oh,
Next to the indoor go-kart track.
Any questions?
And that indoor go-kart track is closing there, expanding that pickleball facility. And adding some golf into it.
For the record, I think it is important though, that staff confirmed for the record that substitution, displacement, and absorption will be part of the research that's done, just so that we can speak to that when we come back.
Brian McCarl for the records, that isn't something we take into consideration. Primarily it is, does this remove blight? Does this increase the economic base? Does this create future property tax increments?
But again, for us to know that it's going to create future input, we have to know what the displacement factor is. I mean, that's displacement and absorption are a critical part of any fiscal impact analysis that we're going to see on this topic. So I mean, and really, I believe there's plenty of net new capacity in the market to accommodate this project. I think it'd be great for that. But I think we've got to know, and I think it's, if they're already gathering the information, it's a pretty easy thing for the consultant to give us.
Correct. That would come out in the market analysis of, you know, can we support this type of entity, a second location? And would this hurt us in other areas? So I do think that would come out. We just don't have it in our.
I just felt it was kind of
criteria.
important because there's a specific tenant already picked for.
Right.
That's right. Well, and the other thing for me, my concern is I don't want to set our applicant up for failure. If the increment's not there, then I mean, so if we're talking about, if we don't know what the absorption factor is, and we're making a designation on future revenues, and they don't perform, recognizing that we are on a limited block with RDA two, it puts the applicant in a terrible position. So
That's a good point.
I think it's important that we have that information.
I agree with you.
Well said. Is there any testimony for the project? In support of the project online? In the room? Any testimony against the project or public comment for the will of the people? Okay, all, can I get a motion? Only the consideration. Motion by member King, I guess, second by member Harris. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Member Sitzer, motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you back with some numbers.
Thanks,
Thank
Jeff.
you.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, if I can just note for the record that, member Adams is departing at 12:20. You still have a quorum of your board, so you can continue on to item C1.
okay, very good. C1, business items. Meeting schedule for 2025.
Would you like me to just speak on this, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
So at the last meeting, you all requested that the first Monday of the month was possibly the best time at 11 a.m. to meet. Going through, it worked out that every Monday was available, except for September, which is Labor Day. And so we suggested moving that to September 8th. And so before you is a complete schedule for the year. If this is selected, we'll go ahead and book meeting rooms, send out invites and get the schedule locked in.
Sounds good. So it's April 7th, May 5th, June 2nd, July 7th, August 4th, September 8th, October 6th, November 3rd, December 1st to take us through 2025.
What was the September date? I apologize.
The eighth,
8th.
you've accommodated us, Bruce.
I was gonna say, yeah,
Right.
I'm not even smart for a couple of days after that, so.
All right.
Me a week, I should be fine.
Mr. Chair, I'll also mention that it was noted last time that if there is business to conduct, if not, you can choose not to have a meeting. You can also choose to go dark in a month if you so choose, but this is the schedule as recommended at the last meeting.
Any comments on this?
Are you expecting any additional meetings besides these? Kind of like this one was 2 weeks or a few weeks after this, but is it as needed on top of those or?
It can be as needed, based upon the chair. And so if the chair did see the need to call a meeting, he would discuss it and we would put something out to get a meeting set up.
Our goal, actually Attorney Assistant City Manager for the record, our goal is to get this body on a regular cadence now that you're meeting. This is something, obviously, staff had multiple applications that were sitting, waiting for this board to be formed and created, and brought back online. So the goal would be a monthly meeting and to not bring you in more than is necessary.
Paul, and anything? To the schedule? Okay,
No, I just wanted to say thanks for trying to accommodate as many complex schedules as you had to. It's much easier to get these things booked out than the first two have been, so I appreciate that.
we're good. I get a motion to approve this schedule. Right, motion to approve 2025 meeting schedule. Okay. Motion by member Kinney, seconded by member Pawnee. Any discussion on this further? Any comments from the public? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the schedule is approved. Item C2 on the request for qualification summary and review of RDA rebranding project.
Yeah, absolutely. JP Words.
Do you want to sit up here?
Oh, looking forward to moving on to it.
There is a.
There is.
If you request a presentation.
If you would like one, yes. Yeah, so JP Works, Economic Development, Marketing Program Manager. So I briefly chatted with you guys at your last meeting about the RFQ rebranding process that we've been undergoing for the RDA. We have gone through the scoring of the 23 proposals, and I'll just cut straight to the chase. After scoring each proposal based on the evaluation criteria in the RFQ, Resonance was determined to be the winning agency due to its familiarity with redevelopment, placemaking, and rebranding projects. They're a complete in-house. You can see the scoring sheet as well as part of the packet. So please, any questions on that element?
Any questions? Who are they? They can tell us a little about Resonance.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you would like to see it, we do have a presentation of their past examples and a little bit about how they approach projects like this and an initial timeline of what they think the project would look like.
I do have that.
Yes.
Where would I have that?
Might be online, so a little loose, maybe.
On your little edge button?
Yeah.
Oh, I understand. Okay, let's see if I can share this one. Well, I'll sort it out.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. Who needs tech support when you have an old clerk?
Yeah, and so while we're pulling this up, and you can see right here actually that, yeah, we scroll down, okay. Yeah, so this is the proposal that, and these are some select slides from their proposal that really kind of highlight who they are. One of the things that stood out about residents in particular is they very specifically, they live in the world of placemaking and helping economic development organizations effectively brand themselves and then extend that into their community via target, strategic placemaking campaigns. Keep scrolling down. This is really just to kind of give you an overview of how they approach projects, and what Resonance stands for as a company themselves. They align very much with the goals that we have at the RDA. And we were really happy to receive a good proposal from them. Keep scrolling. So in this, actually, one slide, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so this is really, I think, kind of the overview of the approach that they're going to apply to our rebranding process. Very much community engagement and stakeholder engagement is going to be an important element of this, as much as your guys' feedback will be as well. We want this to feel organic. We want this brand to feel like the constituents of Reno have something that they feel like they had a hand in. So that research project is part of this is going to be very important. And then creating the strategy behind what the actual rebrand deliverables look like. And then from there, we will move into the actual branding and then the actual tactical marketing of the rebrand. We can keep scrolling. So one of the other reasons that we really liked Resonance proposal, one of the agencies that we've kind of modeled, what we would like our visuals to look after, is the Calgary Municipal Land Corporation. And Resonance did do the entire brand strategy and build out for CMLC. We were impressed with what this product and what CMLC's digital presence looked like before we even knew that Resonance created it. So it was really nice to see them use that as part of their case study. And you can keep scrolling through there. Just different elements of the CMLC brand that Resonance has created for them, that you can kind of see a little bit of the inspiration that we've taken for the direction that we want our rebrand. So this is another example that they use. Go to the next case study. It's their East Village. I think that's the better example. Yeah, so East Village. So this is an extension of one of the brand that they created for CMLC. And this really illustrates the on-the-ground placemaking acumen that Resonance has. You can clearly see that it is connected to the CMLC brand in terms of typography and even a little bit in terms of the design itself. Color scheme is different though, however, it's quickly recognizable as part of their overall portfolio. And you can kind of see where they've taken some inspiration from. This is in Calgary's East Village. But again, really, really good placemaking examples from Resonance. And you can keep scrolling through all of this. Again, more examples. We can share this if you would like to take a look at it yourself. More customers that they've had, again, placemaking in individual places connected directly to the overarching brand.
Question.
Yes, sir.
J10. So did you guys actually go to any of these places?
I have not personally for this, but Brian.
Yeah, Brian McCarter for the record. So I have visited Calgary. I do think Calgary is probably one of the best redevelopment agencies in North America. Can't say even the United States. They're fantastic the way they augment the economic development activities done through Calgary. So there's an independent economic development entity in Calgary. They also have a downtown bid. And CMLC does a great job of identifying neighborhoods and really using their brand and their reach to drive development and drive redevelopment and drive placemaking. and really put the areas and neighborhoods that they create on the map, and create kind of their own weather so that businesses want to move in, residents want to move in there. And nationally, sort of everyone knows that it's an up and coming, thriving, vibrant city.
Yeah, we can point to the East Village in Calgary as one of the most successful redevelopment efforts in North America in terms of the amount of capital that they've brought in from private investment. And if you can scroll to the end of this particular presentation, again, more examples, you can go through all of these. I want to get to the timeline. Perfect. So this kind of gives you guys a timeline of, what this project is expected to look like. I thought about 6 months being kind of the threshold for a rebrand project like this. And I think that, in the grand scheme of things, in terms of evaluating the success of the project after it's launched, that will kind of take into that. But this shows, a roughly 4 to 5 month timeline for this process on their end. And they feel that they have the bandwidth for it, and are excited to do it. Any questions?
Yeah, Nettie Oliverio, what's our budget?
So the budget that I've set forth for this is $90,000. That was the original budget. Just I wanted to get feedback from the proposals to see exactly, what it's going to end up taking. They just sent me a new proposal for $79,000 for the initial branding process, and then they're going to potentially, recommend add-ons as they see fit. From that initial discovery process, I do believe that it will be close to this $110,000 total once travel and all digital channels are considered.
And this money comes from what pot?
This comes out of the art.
Ashley Attorney, Assistant City Manager, for the record. Yes, this is RDA specific funds,
Yes, does
not general fund
That
money.
does not come out of the general fund. No.
Mike Van Houten, for the record, do you see what they are going to produce, kind of aligning or working with the Downtown Reno Partnerships brand and content as well? So the economic arm of the Downtown Reno Partnerships kind of align with what they're doing?
Yes, JP Wertz, 100%. The Downtown Reno Partnership is an incredibly important partner of ours. And whatever brand that we end up developing, it's critical that it is, and there will be included as part of our stakeholder interviews. But it's going to be critical that it works hand in hand with what they already have. It's an important element of this. Any other questions?
Any comment, Colin?
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I would say I think this is a good idea, and it's a good, it has kind of legs, I guess, in terms of helping reframe what downtown Reno gets, known for. And so I think that's really important. I will say that I have followed some of the social commentary about these, an expense like this, and people don't understand, I think, in the general public, that it's RDA specific funding, and it's not, not related to things like pothole fixing, for example. And I think, so I just want to acknowledge those comments, and that we recognize that there's education that needs to happen with some of our, constituents. But I'm very excited about the prospect of what they could do, and help shape where we go.
Excellent.
I'll just add too, I think you guys did a fantastic job with this process, like having a matrix, a scoring sheet, everything's open and public. I mean, it's always kind of confusing or disheartening when you apply for something and not sure how you rose to the top. And I think you guys laid it all out here, exactly why you chose, and clearly the winner scored much higher than everybody else.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We took a very specific approach to this, and we got a lot of very good proposals. It was a tough decision, but we stuck very closely to the scoring criteria that we put forth initially in the RFQ, and it shook out the way that it did.
Yeah, well done.
Excellent.
Any other comments? Okay, so that closes those items, those business items C. We'll move into D. Board, commission, committee member reports and announcements. This is for anything, any comments that doesn't appear on the agenda. Seeing nothing, we'll move into E on future agenda items. Any discussion for items for future meetings?
I mean, obviously, I just like to be curiosity as much as anything, but you know, any ongoing updates that you guys have as Harris continues to progress, please bring them to their board, but I can't think of any specific projects or topics.
Anything else? Anything from you, Colin?
I think it's not necessarily like an immediate request or time frame, but I think kind of following what happens with residents and so forth, I would just like to have some conversations among this board about sort of creative placemaking, and a lot of the people involved with this board are also involved with Next City Vanguard coming here in 2015, and you know, this sort of continues some of that. So I just like to have more of the kind of conversations on the creative placemaking side down the line as we can.
I mean, I can tell one thing that's probably having a potential negative impact on a number of operating businesses, and it's the upcoming series of bridge replacements. You know, as we're seeing bars and restaurants closing and moving downtown, and, you know, further impacts to operating businesses from those bridge replacements. You know, I don't know that there's any capital solutions or funds to offset losses, but that's something that as we continue to focus on RDA 1, it has a real impact on viability of ongoing businesses and potential negative impacts to starting new businesses that any sophisticated operator should be aware of and be considering. And so I don't know if that's necessarily something that we can really address or overcome at this board, but it's certainly something that I think is a headwind for downtown and ongoing 5+ years.
I can help for the record. Could maybe RTC come and give a presentation on that? Because they did a lot of business mitigation efforts when they redid Midtown.
Correct.
If they could,
And Audi as well.
and Audi as well, so. maybe-
RTC's pretty much said that there's nothing they can do other than good circulation and signage, because this is a federally funded project, and there's not any real leeway
There's
on
not
what they're allowed to do.
Gotcha.
Brian
Yeah.
McCart for the record, we can bring them in, talk about timeline, talk about their efforts to mitigate any potential downsides. And then anything that the RDA can do to augment support. Anything like that. I don't know if they're currently in or outside their feedback stage.
We're not taking action, but I can give brief updates on that. Ashley Attorney, Assistant City Manager for the record. As it relates to the Arlington Bridge, feedback has ended. They will be starting construction of the Arlington bridges, both of them, both sides. In May, you will start to see a little bit of activity actually starting to happen in March. There will be no special events happening in Wingfield for the 25 or 26 special event season. There will be traffic circulation mitigation, things down to even our emergency first responders are having to work that in for mitigation efforts. As it relates to Keystone Bridge and Sierra Street Bridge, there is not currently any allocated federal funding for those. And based off of what we are currently hearing from our contacts on the federal circuit in Washington, many of those projects have been placed on hold pending litigation and outcomes of the current administration. So we don't know when those will come.
Because I was told by them that they had that fully funded under the infrastructure bill.
All infrastructure
RTC
bill
told me.
act money is currently on hold.
Frozen, yes.
It's frozen. We, our contacts with USDOT told us that they anticipate bridges to go forward. However, we've not received the green light on all of those. So we're hopeful in the next 6 months or so, some of this will shake out litigation wise, but yes, they're all in the
'Cause
infrastructure.
I know
Act.
they're through the CMAR selection process on the Sierra Street Bridge, and the design was progressing as of probably 30 days ago, the last I'd had any conversations with anybody on that.
So we will bring back updates to this board as we get more information.
Well, and just an observation, Nettie Oliverio, during the Western Lights Festival, because of the crush of people downtown, which was an awesome thing, it got me to thinking about, and I asked the question of our downtown businesses. Except for the J Resort, our current hotel casinos have vertical parking immediately adjacent to them, but it's not currently designated specifically for their customers. And if I, as a resident, get there and park in a stall, and that stall is taken and a guest comes, they may not have a place to park in circumstances like that. So it just got me to thinking about our satellite parking needs for circumstances like that. And wondering for the future what we can do to address that. I've talked to some others in our community who are urban design focused and just asking, so what did you see? What do you think? What do you envision? And especially as we talked about the bridges, again, an issue where as you're coming in from 80 and coming into the downtown area, it's challenging then to get past that, to go down. And the opposite, if you're coming south, the challenge of getting north and parking. And so just, not that I have a solution, but just observing.
Ashley Attorney, Assistant City Manager for the record, we can bring back some information to this body. Staff is currently in process of working with a parking consultant to identify utilization of parking, better uses, best uses, current inventory, future opportunities. So once that is done and there's an operational plan around that, we'll bring that back forward to this board for you to review and understand nuances there.
Go to dinner in ballet.
There you go.
Stimulate the economy.
I
Thank
think
you.
back to the number, Brian McCarter for the record, 14,800 parking spots in downtown. Plenty of capacity. I would say we have a walking problem, not a parking problem, but we do have two public parking garages. One is City Hall parking garage. The other one is the parking gallery associated with the movie theater that the RDA actually runs. And without the movie theater operating, there's a lot of capacity at that location. One question is, how do we circulate people and help them identify, sort of do wayfinding onto where that public parking is? And that's something we can always discuss in the future.
Mike went out for the record. I think the DRP was working on or produced a parking map system that would show people available parking spots as well. Like if they were taking, I'm not sure how far they are. No, it's like a pilot project.
Okay, very good. We'll close that. Move into public comment. Anything online?
You have none online, Mr. Chair.
Okay, before we move to adjourn, I know this is a really busy group. We got a lot going on, so if you can't make one of the meetings, but you still want to participate, feel free to evaluate the packet, send in your comments, and we'll advocate that to the group. We'll speak it on the record, so as we move forward. Other than that, we'll see you on April 7th. Let's give me a motion here.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add, if you can send your comments to staff and not to one another, then we don't run into open meeting law issues, and then we can ensure that those are part of the packet for the record. Thank you.
Yes. So, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Last comments? All those in favor of adjourning now?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Take some snacks if you need some.
Okay, Kurt.